Sure. So I'm an award-winning psychologist. I focus a lot on uh, all aspects of kind of well-being and the employee experience. So throughout my time at Benefex, and as of next week, that's 10 years. So we were a very small business when I started, one of the first kind of 25 employees. We're now, pushing 35 million turnover as a business, a very large global business now. We run benefit schemes for almost 300 large global employers, some of the most recognizable brands in the world. We've completed somewhere in the region of 10 million enrollments over that time, and we've got around 1.6 million people using our platform. So we have a very good and hopefully well-informed position on benefits, and we have lots of data to back that up. The role I do at Benefex now is largely leading our thought leadership across employee experience, benefits, and well-being. So I speak at a lot of conferences. I think I've done about 200 since the pandemic began. Write a lot of articles and just kind of share our knowledge as much as possible. And then also do lots of consulting with our customers. So for the last year and a half, the vast majority of that has been helping them to decide, how do we solve the well-being problem, building those well-being strategies, and kind of kicking the tires of those and making sure that the things that we put in front of employees actually make a difference to their lives. And so that's it. I'm also an author. First book came out a couple of years ago. I've got a second book coming out at Christmas, and currently writing the third book, which I hope will be out early next year as well. So, yeah, I like the sound of my own voice, and reading my own stuff is probably what that's summarised up as.
And not to plug your book, but what's your Christmas book coming up? Just in case people haven't got it on their wish list yet.
So that's called The Humane Workplace. So myself and a group of psychotherapists and psychologists from around Europe have all co-authored a book about the future of the workplace. So we've written a chapter each, and we're using kind of our own experiences and evidence to look at what does that workplace need to look like in the future. So really, really interesting project, and some pretty interesting angles, mostly away from HR and kind of looking at the psychology of the workplace. So yeah, that's out December. It keeps getting pushed back for the publishers, but they tell me December now, so we will see.
It's cost its out in time for Christmas, but very applicable to also everyone on this call. So, Gethin, should we start with addressing the last 18 months, 2 years? How do you feel the pandemic has changed what employees want from their benefit schemes? Have you seen a difference? And if so, could you elaborate a bit further in terms of both your experiences and the research that backs your findings?
Yeah, so kind of no surprise, overnight we saw a pretty big increase in demand for wellbeing benefits. So around two-thirds of our customers told us that their plan was to spend more on benefits throughout the pandemic to better support their people, and that would be mostly focused on well-being. So kind of probably no surprise with that. I guess what was quite surprising to us is about 6 months into the first UK lockdown, we saw around a 20 to 30% increase in take up of and demand of benefits like income protection, life assurance, critical illness. And these were kind of old, stale, not very sexy benefits that suddenly became reappreciated. And I think part of the reason was employees started to face up to the finite nature of their lives and realize that actually, how would I support my life and my family if I became ill, if I couldn't work, if I caught the virus, for example. And so that was really surprising to see. And we also saw a resurgence of lots of other older benefits that take up had pretty much kind of leveled off over the last couple of years, but the pandemic forced an increase of. Access to digital services, again, no surprise, people needed to speak to GPs and did that as virtually as possible. But during the first UK lockdown, 5% of the UK bought a new bike. That was millions and millions of people bought a bike. So cycle to work schemes kind of went through the roof, and we saw record numbers being sold. We also saw pretty significant increases in demand for financial wellbeing support. So clearly the pandemic eroded financial resilience for millions of employees. We saw that employees took kind of voluntary pay cuts, had their pay forcibly reduced, went on furlough. Redundancies, which obviously even in our customers that didn't make redundancies still touched the lives of some of these people because it had a wider impact on their partners or families. And all of that put a lot of strain on already strained households, because we know at the start of 2020, that we had a stagnant savings habit and that consumer debt was on the rise. And then the pandemic hit, and the reason why the coronavirus retention scheme came in by the government was because the government realised how ill prepared people were to take pay cuts or periods away from work. So that's why all that furlough cash was paid out. And we also saw some pretty worrying scams affecting employees. So again, as soon as the first UK lockdown hit, GCHQ gave a very rare announcement to the UK that basically said the pandemic is probably going to fuel increase in scams. And the HMRC and the ONS later found out that was absolutely true. We obviously saw pension scams increase quite significantly, crazy amounts of people getting conned out of money from their pension and retirement funds. And then when it comes to pensions as well, we also saw about 11% people reduced or stopped their pension contributions. And obviously that might cause us a problem in the future, because some estimates are that people might have set themselves back by 10 years or so.
And that was very much with the mindset of needing cash now, hence why not putting it into pension funds. Just when building out the last 18 months, we had lockdown 1, various other lockdowns over that time, and where we are now. Have you seen things peak and trough in terms of those benefits over that period? And has it started to stabilise yet?
Yeah, we have. So we're a global business. We're in 55 odd countries. And what we could see when we tracked the data was, as countries locked down, we could see an increase in traffic to benefit platforms right around the world. So what we found quite quickly was that benefit schemes kind of became this place that employees went to where they kind of wanted and expected support. So when they started struggling with money, when their mental health started to take a bit of a kick in, when they struggled generally with their well-being, they went to their benefit platforms, which is, I've been doing this for 20 years, kind of no surprise, because if you draw a line through most benefit schemes, it's well-being is almost every benefit that you offer, and financial well-being are kind of the rest. But what was interesting is that we started to see, employees told us, and there's quite a lot of data to back this up, and other research from other providers, that employees started to kind of de-appreciate some gimmicky benefits that had become quite popular. So we saw less people enamored by things like perks and massages and stuff like that, because actually when it came to the crunch, when it came to the largest pandemic, the largest health concern many people have had in their lives, let alone their careers, things like massages and free fruit and all that kind of stuff we talk about quite a lot as being not really well-being, but kind of took a fair share of the market. People started to realize that actually didn't give them any real help. And so I guess what we saw generally was a benefits renaissance, effectively, is kind of what I like to call it. We saw that employers were increasing their benefit spends as they struggled to support people. So as soon as the first lockdown hit, people were kind of almost looking around for the fire extinguisher, reading the instructions and then trying to work out how to use it. Whereas those employers that I work with that fully had well-being strategies with benefits at their core already had that well-trodden path. So when the pandemic hit, those employees knew where to go for support. The benefits that were actually helped them were already available. And I think that was a pretty significant change.
And then leading on from this conversation and topic, something I spend a lot of time talking about is the E word, engagement. And that engagement is, how do we increase engagement? How do we engage those who don't normally engage in programs? And what are the barriers that are preventing engagement? So from your perspective, and again, from the data, the research and what you've seen, what is preventing employees from engaging in their benefit schemes? And how's that, again, changed? Again, keeping it quite succinct over the last year.
So one of the things that we did some new reward director research very recently, where we surveyed hundreds of reward directors globally and asked them about challenges to benefit schemes and success of those schemes. And one of the things that came out on top was that poor technology was holding them back. So poor technology was either not removing enough admin from employers, or was actually creating a bit more admin for them. But either way, it wasn't doing the job it was supposed to do, which was to make all this stuff a lot easier. And so what we found, and what we've been heavily focused on for a long, long time, is creating kind of the closest to consumer grade technology as we could. And in psychology, there's something called Jacob's Law, which is this idea that when we use technology, we know how to use other people's platforms, and most employees will spend their time on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and they will use Apple products. So we don't want to retrain them how to use technology. We want to use the experiences and the expectations they already have. And so we've been applying that to benefit schemes so that people effectively go through a shopping experience. They add things to a basket, they go through a checkout process. We also made sure that our technology was easy to access. So regardless of what device or operating system you use, regardless of where you live in the world, regardless of what language you speak or what currency you get paid in, you would have this really great consumer grade experience. And I think, and collectively keeping an eye on the fact that we have this very interesting thing when you sell tech to HR, is that your buyer is not necessarily your user. So where people like Instagram will create a product for everyone and everyone has to use it, we are trying to, the person who's buying from us, we're trying to show how we solve problems for them, but we also have to solve problems for the people that are using the platform so they come back again and they re-engage. And lots of things we've been looking at towards the future now is, how can we help people with really quick wins? So little things that we've launched some partnerships recently where, within 3 clicks, can we get somebody to reduce some of their outgoings on everyday spends? So the kind of stuff that people let tick over, like utilities and bank accounts. How easy can we get people to switch some of those things just to free up, even if it's a few pounds a month, to improve their financial well-being? And likewise with all other areas of well-being, can we get them to access mindfulness very easily and remove all that friction? So when somebody's struggling, they can click 2 buttons and get the help they need and not have to think about it too much.